don't know if you realized it, but 1 year ago today, you were helping me move in. And I've been blessed by this congregation in so many ways. I continue to keep y'all in my prayers just about every time I pray, and I'm thankful to be here, and I'm thankful for each one of you. So keep that in mind as you go through the day. This is our, I guess, 1 year anniversary, I guess you could say. So today, I want to talk about servants and masters. And this is the fourth important relationship when you think about relationships. Of course, the first one is God and man, and the second one is the husband and wife. The third one is the husband and wife and their children. And then, of course, the fourth one is servants and masters, our jobs, our supervisors, our bosses, the companies that we work for, however you might want to put it. But when you think about the time of Christ, there were many, the servants that spoken of there were kind of part of the family. They stayed there with them, and many of those were mistreated in so many different ways. Slaves were treated as a thing instead of a person. They were bought and sold. Remember, think back in Genesis, way back in almost the beginning, Genesis 37 and 28. You remember who was a slave, who was sold as a slave in Genesis 37? Look there. It says, "Then there passed by Midianites, merchant men, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph into Egypt." So slaves and people working for each other, there's always been that relationship in those people. In the time of Christ, around that time, there were 60 million slaves in the empire. So you can think about how important it was at that time for Paul to be speaking on this, speaking on the slaves and masters. When you compare, you can think about masters and supervisors. I mean, you spend 40 hours a week at a job many times. And you should have the same interest in the goal as your employer. If you don't, then that business is not going to do very well. That's why a lot of times contractors, they don't have any skin in the game, really. They just are paid to do a job, and they may not receive some stock or some of the company. So when you want the business to do good, there needs to be the same interest and the same goal. So when you think about supervisors and employees or servants and masters, whatever it may be, they need to be working toward the same goal. Many times today, there is Christians. Some Christians are supervisors, and some Christians are employees, and usually not both. I've been blessed many times and have had really good supervisors. Even some non-Christians that were just they were very. They would act like Christians, and really their only benefit to them would to be a Christian. But anyway, as we go through this lesson, we're going to be talking about servants and masters. And remember, servants would just be, when we say the word servants, that's the same thing. You could say the word employee, or when you think about masters, you could think about your boss or your supervisor, or maybe even the owner of the company, whatever. Okay, so that relationship is the relationship we're speaking of when we speak of this servants and masters and how it would apply to us today. Okay, see Ephesians 6:5. Let's read those 4 verses there. Ephesians 6:5, as we continue on about our relationships, speaking of servants and masters here. "Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, and singleness of your heart as unto Christ, not as with eye service, as men pleasers, but as the servants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, with good will, doing service as to the Lord, and not to men, knowing that whatsoever good thing any man doeth, the same shall he receive of the Lord, whether he be bond or free. And ye masters, do the same things unto them, forbearing, threatening, knowing that your master also is in heaven, neither is there respect of persons with him. So there's our verse of the day. So let's get into the text. But before we do, I want to speak a little bit about relationships. When you think about Genesis 4:8, I mean, you can see all the way to the beginning, there's been problems with relationships, and you can see it through the Bible. You look at Cain and Abel, there in 4:8, it says, "And Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and slew him." So there was definitely some problems there between, in that family, or in that relationship. And the same problems, I mean, you can look around today as you look around and see relationship. People are murdering each other. They're going to it. They not happy with a job, so they might go in and shoot up the people there. I mean, different reasons, but they take violence into their own hands, and they do violence to others. So as we think about these verses, look at the commandments we have about relationships. So these really, as we read these scriptures, they apply to husbands and wives. They apply to parents and children. They apply to us being an employee or a boss in a company. So let's look at a few here. Romans 12:18, "If it be possible, as much as you lieth, be at peace with all men." So as we work and as we do the things in our jobs, we have to try to be at peace with the people that we work for and work with. Look at Romans 14:19. "Let us therefore follow after the things which make for peace, and things wherewith one may edify one another." Remember the golden rule, Matthew 7 and verse 12. "Therefore all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them." So if you want to have good employees, then maybe you need to get in there and work with them and be a good manager, a good employee. Having been there, how would you want them to treat you? So those kind of ideas. We got to love. In Proverbs 10:12, "Hatred stirreth up strifes, but love covereth all sins." And Romans 13:10, "Love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore love is the fulfilling of the law." As we work, we need to learn to love our fellow employees. And of course, if we love them, we're going to talk to them about Christ as we work there. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Our example as we work with them. What is it? What does it cause? What can our example do for a fellow employee or somebody that we know? We have to be tolerant sometimes. Sometimes you just don't want to be around that person. And I know at work it's like sometimes it's hard to be around some people and maybe they don't work or there might be something about them that you just don't like. But look here in 1 Thessalonians 5:14, it says, "Now we exhort you, brethren, warn them that are unruly, comfort them that are feeble-minded, support the weak, be patient toward all men." So we need to be patient with other people as we work in the workforce. Look at Romans 12:19. "Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord." You know, sometimes people may do something to you. They may try to stab you in the back at work, but where's that vengeance need to lie? That vengeance needs to lie in God's hands. And don't worry about it. Look at 1 Peter 3:8. "Finally, be ye all of one mind, having compassion one toward another. Love as brethren, be pitiful, be courteous." We need to be courteous to our fellow employees, to our managers. What about this one? Philippians 2:3. "Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind let each esteem other better than themselves." You know, sometimes we're in the workforce. We want us to be better. We want to get the raises. We want to be the better employee. "Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others." Look after your employee. Look after them. How can you help them be a better employee? Romans 12:10, "Let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil. Cleave to that which is good. Be kindly affectionate one another with brotherly love and honor, preferring one another. Not slothful in business." So you shouldn't be lazy when you're working. "Fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing instant in prayer, distributing to the necessity of the saints, given to hospitality. So these things are, this is part of being in a relationship. It's some of the things that we must do as we work. Okay, so let's think about this. As you work in the workforce and there's some problem that you want to correct, say Paul wants to correct this problem of servants being mistreated by their masters. How would he correct that kind of problem? Because he can't say that you just got to get rid of all the slaves. There's 60 million slaves out there at that time. Doing work for the masters, it must get done. They were out farming or whatever they may need to do for that master. So if Paul would have said that you just needed to get rid of all slaves, what would that have done to the economy? So if you're going to fix the problem here, where do you need to start? We need to start in the hearts of those people. Start in the hearts of the masters. Start in the hearts of the slaves. If you're going to have a master that's mistreating somebody, change their heart. Maybe they'll quit mistreating them. And that's the same thing we need to try to do as we go out and we try to teach the gospel. We want to teach it to their hearts. We want them to hear it with their hearts, not just with their minds. And Paul had to teach them to change their attitudes. Both slaves and master needed a heart transplant, if you think about it. Look at Proverbs 4 in verse 23. It says, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." All these issues with slaves and with masters, it's coming from the heart of that person. Proverbs 23:7, "For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, saith he to thee, but his heart is not with thee." Matthew 15:18, "Do not ye yet understand that whatsoever entereth into the mouth goeth into the belly and is cast into the draught? But those things which proceed of the mouth come forth from the heart, and they defile a man." So if you want to change, if Paul wants to change, if God wants to change us, he needs to change our hearts. As we live our life, we're not going to be changed. We're not going to be a good Christian unless Christ has changed our hearts. Look at 1 Corinthians 7 in verse 20 through 24 here. It says, let every man abide in the same calling wherein he was called. Art thou called, being a servant? Care not for it. But if thou mayest be made free, use it rather. For he that is called in the Lord, being a servant, is the Lord's free man. Likewise also, he that is called, being free, is Christ's servant. Ye are bought with a price, but not ye the servants of men. Brethren, let every man, wherein he is called, therein abide with God. So it doesn't matter whether we're a servant. It doesn't matter whether we're a master. We're called from God, and we need to be a Christian and be godly in that life that we were called in, or that we're in. So when you think of it, Christian, just because a master is a Christian, he's not necessarily commanded to get rid of his servants, but he's commanded to treat them in a way that is acceptable. Look at 1 Timothy 6, verses 1 and 2. It says, "Let as many servants as are under the yoke count their own masters worthy of all honor, that the name of God and his doctrine be not blasphemed, and they, having believing masters, let them not despise them, because they are brethren, but rather do them service, because they are faithful and beloved, partakers of the benefit. These things teach and exhort." So these servants and these masters, Paul's not saying they have to get rid of that relationship. I mean, that relationship really is still going on today. It's just we're treated better. We have to go to work to make money. We have to work for our supervisor and do what he says. That's still kind of a master and slave, but your supervisor is treating you in a way that is more acceptable than many did at the time of Christ. Yeah, when you think about it, there was many cruel masters. There's a couple of verses there if you want to read in Titus 2:9 and 10, and Colossians 3:11 talks about those kind of things. Look at in 1 Peter 2:18. Servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the froward. Those masters that were not good masters, that were mistreating you as a servant, you still you're still subject to them with fear and trying to do the things that he asks you to do. So now let's get into the text. We've talked about the relationship. We've talked about servants and masters, and here in 6:5 it says, "Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling and singleness of heart, as unto Christ." So, as a master, which would be the preference? Physical obedience or obedience from the heart? I mean, you could beat them and make them do what they wanted to do, but what about a slave or somebody that's working and they're doing what you ask because they want to? They're doing it from the heart. What kind of problem would you have if you were if you caused somebody physically to do what you wanted? Sometimes you're wasting your time. They may, as I said a couple of weeks ago, I think, they may be sitting in their chair, but they may not be sitting in their chair with their heart. They may be picking the squash off the vines, but they may not be picking the squash off with their heart. They might step on some if they're not doing it from their heart. When you think about this word fear and trembling, out of respect and duty, look at Philippians 2:12. It says, "Wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling." That same working out your salvation in fear and trembling is the same fear and trembling here in this verse. Not really scared, but out of respect and trying to do what is asked. When you look at this verse, there's a part of it that talks about your relationship to Christ. And you'll see that several times in some of these verses. Look at 1 Peter 3:15. It says, "But sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you a reason of the hope that is in you with meekness and fear." So as this same meekness and fear, that's the same meekness and fear we're talking about here. Respect. We respect God, and we want to do the same things. The only thing I wasn't going to bring up Joseph, but as I was studying this yesterday, it's like Joseph is the perfect example of somebody that's working in an environment that he's a slave. And look how he was treated. Look at Genesis 39. We'll look at a couple of verses there and Genesis 41. But in Genesis 39:1 it says, "And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, brought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man. And he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had he put into his hand. And it came to pass, from the time that he had made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in his house and in the field. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught he had, save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. I mean, that's what we want in the workforce today. If we're working, we want to be thought of as a goodly person or well favored. If you're well favored by a supervisor, what are you going to get? You're going to be blessed in many ways with raises and maybe bonuses, whatever, if they're a good manager and a good company to work for. Look at Genesis 41. "And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, For as much as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring and from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in the vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried before him, Bow the knee, and he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. So in the workforce, if we act like a Christian, we're going to be blessed in many ways. And maybe you've known that as you've worked in the workforce over these many years. Many companies today, they just have standards, and they just give you a standard raise whether you do the right things or not. But many out there do. You are put in a scale. Those that do the right things will be getting better raises. So anyway, servants, obey your masters. We need to try to do the things that they would ask. What's the real key here in this text? Look here at 6:5 and verse 7. You'll see the underlines there. Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling and singleness of your heart, as unto Christ, with goodwill doing service as to the Lord, and not to men. So when you think about the relationships of the slave and the master, the employee, the supervisor, that's the same kind of relationship with us and Christ. When you think about this relationship, maybe you've heard the question, what would Jesus do? That was a big phrase a while back. I don't know if it's still out there a lot. I think there's a book even that was written in that topic. I've read some of it. But let's think about that in a different way, though. That's according to this text here. It says, what about, think of it like this. What would you do to Jesus if he's your employee? What would you do to Jesus if he's your master? How would you treat him? So, because we have to treat our employees or our masters or whatever we are, our boss, or we've got to treat them the same as we treat Christ. That's what this text is saying, as unto Christ, as to the Lord. Think about this with your spouse and your children, just since we're here. What about your manager, your employees, your friends, members of the church? We treat each other this way. What would you do if that was Jesus on the other, that you were talking to? Or would you say those things if it was Jesus standing there? What about Peter? Remember Peter? He was denied Christ 3 times. What about Jesus in the garden? He wanted his disciples to pray with him, and they slept. So we want to be good. We want to be a good Christian. We want to be a friend of Christ. We want to be a friend of those that are around us. So we need to be, however we're treating that person, we're in essence treating that, you're treating that person like you would Christ, or treating Christ in that way. Look at Ephesians 6:5, another point here. Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, in singleness of your heart as unto Christ. Not with eye service or men pleasers, but as the servants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart. You know, it's important, and when we're working or whatever we're doing, that we do it from the heart. Look at Ecclesiastes 9 and 10. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might, for there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave whither thou goest. We got to do, when we work, we got to do it with all our might. Maybe we should be worn out when we get home that day. Look at Colossians 3, 23 and 25. 23 through 25 here. This is kind of the same text as Ephesians. It talks about slaves and servants and masters. And whatsoever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not to men. So whenever you're working, it's like you're working for the Lord. Knowing that the Lord ye shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for ye serve the Lord Christ, but he that doeth wrong shall receive for the wrong which he hath done, and there is no respect of persons. Kind of the same thing. So let's think about these lists of things here. This list of stuff came from the Georgia Piedmont Technical College. And I thought it was kind of interesting. I was just looking out there on the internet searching for ethical things. Because when you're a Christian, of course, the ethics means a lot. The whole Bible is full of what ethics are, our ethics, and the things that we should do and not do. when you think about this word, men pleasers, there many do that today. If you've worked in the workforce, whenever the boss is sitting there watching you, man, they will work harder than anybody else at the place of business. But when that boss leaves, they're sitting down in a chair on their phone, maybe. So there are many men pleasers out there. They work when their boss is around. But we must have good ethics. We must, when you think about this work ethics, there was a video I saw, and it was like this woman, or this other employee asked this woman to do something wrong, something that was unethical. If somebody asks you to do that thing, there was the suggestion. They says, buy thinking time. You need to think about it before you answer it quickly. Yeah, I'll do that. If you answer it too quickly, you may not have wanted to answer that way when you start thinking. Think before you act. Of course, as a Christian, we need to buy some thinking time as we go through our life. That could possibly keep us from many sins that we might encounter. Why would a supervisor desire to hire a Christian? What about your Christian ethics? What about your work ethics, your morals? You're not going to steal. You're not going to lie. You're going to work hard. So being a Christian in the work environment is very important. Look at these things that were listed there. Appearance. Is appearance as a Christian important? Displays proper dress, grooming, hygiene, and manners? Well, yeah. What about attendance? You go to work, you need to be there. Attends class, arrives and leaves on time, tells the instructor in advance of planned absences, makes his assignments up. I mean, these are important things. What about attitude? Having a positive attitude as you work, appears confident and has true hopes of self. These are the ethics that this college tries to instill in young people. If they just study their Bible, they would probably find similar things. Look at character. Displays loyalty, honesty, dependability, reliability, initiative, and self-control. Look at communication. Displays proper verbal and nonverbal skills and listens. Cooperation. Displays leadership skills, properly handles criticism, conflicts, and stress, maintains proper relationships with peers, and follows chain of command. Look at organizational skill. Prioritizing and dealing with change. Productivity. Follows safety practices and conserves resources and follows instructions. I mean, how important are these things in a job? As a Christian, we should be trying to be the best at all of these. Look at respect. Deals properly with diversity, shows understanding and tolerance. Teamwork. Respects rights of others. As a team worker, helpful and confident. I mean, just kind of as an example here, if we want to be doing what Christ would have us do, if we want to work in a way that Christ would work, these are some of the things. And we could put a scripture probably with every single one of those if we had time. But now this is the one that's hard. Look at this one. Ephesians 6:7. With good will doing service as to the Lord and not to men. With good will. Happy to work. I'm happy to be there. Some people go to work, I don't want to be here. Don't worry about others getting better raises or rewards. Where's your reward? Does it really matter if we get a reward here on this earth? Our reward's in heaven. Think of when you go to work, think of the things you are accomplishing and the people you're helping rather than the drudgery of it. Sometimes we have to learn to enjoy the job that we're working. Look at the Psalm 128:1. Blessed is everyone that feareth the Lord and walketh in his ways, for thou shalt eat the labor of thine hands. Happy thou shalt be, and it shall be well with thee. If you want to be happy, then you got to labor. You got to work. We were talking about it this morning in our class about some people don't want to work. They want to just live off the government money. But we need to work. It's commanded many times in the Bible. Look at 1 Peter 4, starting in 12. 1 Peter 4, starting in 12, it says, Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened unto you. But rejoice inasmuch as ye are partakers of Christ's sufferings, that when his glory shall be revealed, ye may be glad also with exceeding joy. If ye be reproached for the name of Christ, happy are ye, for the Spirit of glory and God resteth upon you. And as we go through life, think about what Christ suffered. Are we really suffering anywhere close to what Christ suffered? Suffered on the cross. He suffered many other ways, beatings and whippings and the crown of thorns. What is we just going to complain at work just because we didn't get the raise that somebody else did? I've been there. I've done that. I know. At my job where we worked, it was a rotation. They would rotate the best raise around about 10 people. And some people, there was a few that wasn't in the rotation, but it took you 10 years to get to the good raise. It was a long time. But anyway, sometimes it's disappointing, but we need to be happy in that. Think of the reward. Look at Ephesians 6:8. Knowing that whatsoever good thing any man doeth, the same shall he receive of the Lord, whether he be bond or free. Whether you be the master, whether you be the slave, think about where your paycheck's coming from. Our real paycheck's coming from God, and it's going to be heaven and being there with Him. Look at Colossians 3:24. Knowing that the Lord ye shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for ye serve the Lord Christ. And Matthew 10:42. And whosoever shall give to drink unto one of these little ones cup of cold water only in the name of a disciple, verily I say unto you, he shall be in no wise lose his reward. God's going to remember your work and your labor, that how you worked and how you labored, and whether you did it according to His. Well, look at Hebrews 6:10. For God is not unrighteous to forget your work and labor of love. As you're working as an employee, what are you doing? You're showing everybody how to act like a Christian. God's not going to forget that way that you showed Him to others. Look at 2 Corinthians 5 and verse 10. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that every one may receive the things done in his body according to that he hath done, whether it be good or bad. Those people that steal from the companies, those people that do the things that they should not do, they're going to receive their rewards. They're going to be answered. They're going to answer to Christ in judgment. Look at Matthew 25:40. It says, And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you have done it unto one of the least of these, my brethren, ye have done it unto me. These things that we've done to other people, these things that, whether it be good or whether it be bad, if you treat another person in a good way, are you not doing that to God, to Christ? As you treat each other and as you treat another employee or another person in a bad way, are you not doing that to Christ? How comforting would this have been for the slaves that were suffering in so many ways to know that they're going to receive this reward. This reward is coming, and they're not going to have to suffer anymore. A few minutes on masters here. Ephesians 6:9, and you masters do the same things unto them, forbearing, threatening, knowing that your master also is in heaven, neither is there respect of persons with him. Look at these verses here. Colossians 3:25. But he that doeth wrong shall receive the wrong which he hath done, and there is no respect of person. As a supervisor or a boss, we shouldn't have respect for other persons. Look at Matthew 7:2. Judge not that you be judged. We need to be careful that we make sure that person has done what he said he done, and be careful judging somebody. Look at Proverbs 13:31. He that oppresseth the poor reproacheth his maker. These are all thinking when you think about the master side. And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye done it unto me. When you talk about the master, if he's going to beat his slave, it's like beating Christ. Mark 4:24, and he said unto them, take heed what ye hear, with what measure ye made it shall be measured to you, and unto you that hear shall more be given. Look at Luke 6:38. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. You know, and as a master, and we're trying to have a good business and to make more money or to make more product, the way you treat your employees, the way you treat your slaves is very important at that time. Look at Matthew 6:14 and 15. For if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will forgive you. Maybe your employee does something wrong. We should, as a master, we need to be careful and we need to forgive him. Look at James 2:13, had judgment without mercy. He that showeth no mercy, mercy rejoiceth against judgment. Do we need to show mercy to our employees? Proverbs 22:2, the rich and the poor meet together, the Lord is maker of them all. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're rich. It doesn't matter whether you're the master or the slave. 2 Corinthians 5:10, wherefore we labor that whether present or absent, we may be accepted of him. We labor, we need to be accepted of Christ. Look at this next section. There's many, I'm not going to read all these verses, but there's many reasons why work is important. Your efforts and courage are not without purpose and direction. You know, think about what being a Christian in a work environment does. It provides for your own, right? Gives you money for your family, to feed them. It allows you to give back to the Lord. There in Ephesians 4:28, it makes one happy. Acts 20:35, you can go buy you some things that make you happy. So as we close, I wanted to kind of overview the last 3 lessons. When you talk about submitting yourselves one to another in the fear of God, that's what we're talking about when we talk about husbands and wives, when we're talking about parents and children, when we talk about parents and employees. Paul is telling us how to submit ourselves one to another. We could read Ephesians 5:22 and where it talked about the wives submitting to your own husbands, and we could read the verses about the husband being the head of the wife and the husband dying for his wife and the love that he must show to her. You could read about in Ephesians 6 about the children obeying the parents and honoring their father and their mother. And then you get to managers, employees, where it talks about the servants and the masters and how they treat each other. So in these situations, what is our purpose as a Christian? What does being a faithful Christian husband or wife do? If you have a faithful relationship as husband and wife, what does that do? Does it not raise children that are faithful? What about being a faithful parent? Or a child? What about being a faithful Christian, a boss or employee? It's showing the world how to be a Christian and that you love God and that you love Christ. There was a note here, I don't remember which commentary I read it in, but it said, it demonstrates to the world the exalted life of Christ and His church. Is that not what you're doing as a good employee, as a good parent, as a good child? You're demonstrated Christ's life to others. In Matthew 5:16, I think this sums up the whole lesson about parents and children and employees and husband and wife. It says, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Is that not our goal here on this earth? It's not to make millions and millions of dollars. It's not to give our other employees a hard time, or it's to shine our light before men that are not Christians, before women that are not Christians, so they may see our good works, and it may glorify the Almighty God. Maybe it is today that you need prayers at the church, and maybe you need to ask for forgiveness for something. We would love to take care of that for you, pray for you. Maybe it is that you haven't been baptized for the remission of your sins. We can take care of that as well if you'd come as we stand and as we sing.